Welcome back to the Kingsview Model Railway channel. Today I'm going to talk about 3 mistakes I made when I built this layout. Now, this is probably the last video in this series of tips and mistakes and ideas about your room. But I wanted just to share with you 3 mistakes I made when I built this layout that I wouldn't make if I built another layout. So the first mistake I made, and look, it's not a major mistake, but if I'd have thought it through more, I'd have done something different, which is the orientation of the layout that I purchased to get me started. Because the layout here and the Kingsview Model Railway is in 2 pieces. It's this original exhibition layout that I bought down in Coffs Harbour 5 years ago, which we then extended and have run a layout right around the wall and built a turntable and made it into a larger, more functioning railway. And that came from purchasing larger locomotives like 57s, 58s, AD60s that really require large radius curves. Now this layout, you could just run a Garrett around it at a pinch. You wouldn't run a 57 or a 58. The curves were a little bit too tight. So over the last 5 years, I've eased out some of those curves and I've done a fair bit of rebuilding. But if I'd have got the orientation of this layout correct in the first place, I mightn't have had to do some of the work that I've had to do to be able to integrate it to stage 2. One of those was actually to build this piece here that you can see here. This is a tack-on piece that I've built to act as a bridge to get to the other stage. And the layout was originally across here, but we built this piece on. Paul came up and helped with that, and we built this piece on. But in reality, if the layout had been turned around 90 degrees, we'd have been able to integrate getting from the original layout to the second stage a lot easier without having to add these tack-on pieces. And I'll just show you the other piece that we had to add on to be able to integrate it to the other part of the layout. I'll just jump in here. The original layout went straight up here, but we actually had to add this piece on so that we were able to get from this part of the layout over here without making major adjustments to this part of the layout. So as we were easing out this curve, we found that the curve needed to be out over the edge of the layout, so we've actually had to add about 150 mil onto the edge of the layout to bring it into a place where it could integrate with the rest of the layout. So again, if the layout had been spun around, I wouldn't have had to add this piece on. I could have just come off the existing track and run it onto the new section of the layout. To get from stage 1 to stage 2 is quite easy. The trains just run around the wall. But when they come back here, when you want to do continuous running, they've obviously got to get from this stage over to the original stage. So we designed a bridge that you can just pull up like this using a couple of pad bolts, and it just locks in like that. Now, that's okay. It works pretty well. But when you're running and you're shunting inside the layout, you're in and out all the time. Now, none of us are getting any younger, and it's a great idea when you're a 45-year-old. It's pretty easy to duck under and whatever. But as you get older, it's getting too hard to duck under. So you're constantly pulling out the pad bolts and opening and closing, and of course that adds wear to the layout. And the other thing that you've got to consider too is that all of the layouts made out of timber. And when they're made out of timber, they expand and contract. Now, we live in we're in a semi-tropical climate here, on the Gold Coast, and the join here sometimes is 2 millimetres, other times it's about 8 millimetres. And that's based on the expansion and contraction of the timber. So, yes, I could leave the air conditioner on all the time and keep the room, completely temperature controlled and control the humidity in here. But, the amount of money that it would cost to run the air conditioning full time would preclude me from buying some new locomotives. I'd rather buy some new locos, or new rolling stock. So try and avoid these bridges if possible. They're often called duck unders or access bridges or whatever. But if you can possibly avoid them in your layout, do so. I tolerate this one. I've often thought of ways of trying to get rid of it, but in reality, to get to the other part of the layout, it's really difficult without one. So I use it, it runs okay, but if you can avoid it, try and avoid them. A mistake a lot of modelers make, and I've made it too, is making your railway too big and making it almost inaccessible to get to some parts of the layout. I see it all the time, on all of the layouts. I see that in an effort to get as much track and bang for buck as possible, the layout is made actually physically too big. Now if I get out the rule here and I run it across to the wall, I see that my layout here is about 1100 mil. Now 1100 in my view is just too big. What it should be is about 900. Now pulling 200 mil out of here means that I would be able to reach over there without having to stretch or get up on a stand. Now at the moment, I just can't get to that final part. Now you'd say, well, do you need to get to it? Well, often you do, particularly when you're adding scenery. You need to be able to get to the fullest extremity. And of course, over here in this part of the layout, when you have 1100 and 1100, the diagonal there is about 1600. And that's why there's no scenery or buildings at the back part of the layout there, because I just can't get to it. And in reality, you really need to make your layout about 900 mil. If you make it 900, then you'll find that it's a lot easier to be able to do your modelling, and it just makes it a lot easier. So if you're building a layout around a wall, just don't make it anything more than about 900 mil, because you just won't be able to get to it. And the higher that you make it, the narrower you need to make it, because you just can't reach with your arms that far. So 900 mil for me. Should I ever build another railway? 900 mil is where it will be. And I suppose the final perspective is the actual layout up against the wall. Now, obviously, you make your railway, and you don't know what your future is. You don't know whether you're going to be there for 1 year or 50 years. So have a think about, when you build your layout, what is the end game? Now, when I built this, I thought I'd be here forever, and I don't know whether I will or I won't be. But I know that if I had to move this layout or pull it to pieces, that I'd probably end up destroying it, because the way in which I've built it, I've attached it, with beams around the wall, and it would be virtually impossible to break the layout up without destroying it or making it really difficult. So should I ever build another layout, I'd build it so that I've got an 800 or 900 mil gap around the wall, so that the layout would be freestanding in the room, so it would be out here in the middle of the room. Like our first stage over here, it's freestanding, I can get around the whole layout. Now it's 2.2 across, so it's a stretch, I've got to use all sorts of gadgets to get up and get over to the centre of this layout. In reality, if this was 2.2 or 2.3 wide, make it a lot easier to service, but it's not. It's about 2400 wide, so it just makes it difficult to get to those centre bits. But certainly my last and final point is build your layout so that you can access it all the way around. It also gives you a different perspective on the layout as well. Think about it like this. Every time I take photos or I got people over, you're always seeing the layout from the same perspective. So you tend to build your scenery from that perspective. But if the layout was a little bit off the wall, you would build the layout so that it can be viewed from both sides. Your scenery would be a little bit more different, and you get a different perspective, and you'd actually get, I think, a little bit more enjoyment out of your layout, because you could see it from different perspectives, different sides, different lighting. Certainly makes it enjoyable. Now, sometimes you've got a small room, you've got to do, you've got to go around the walls to get any kind of length or whatever. But certainly what you find is that by not having it up against the wall, you can get around it. But if you do have it up against the wall, again, the point I made before, no wider than 900 mil, and you'll find then it's easy to service and easy to scenic as well, and that's really important. One of my final points I'd like to make is about turntables. They are fantastic. They add a dimension to the layout and a level of realism, but they can be difficult to make work. I've had all sorts of running issues with this one. I think I've got them pretty well solved with the help of some tools to make it operate really well. Thanks, John Gaydon, you were really helpful with that split ring that you sent me, so it was really good. But turntables take up a lot of room, so the radius of the curve around here is about 48 inches. So across here, across this part of the track, it's over 2 metres. So servicing it again becomes really difficult. So one of the hardest points to get to is just over behind the coal loader. Now I can access from around the side, but again, you've got to be very careful how you plan an area like this. This is working okay, but it can be difficult to service some parts of the layout because it's just physically difficult to get to. And when I first built this, I was actually up on a stand here and I was kneeling across here, and I put my foot back and I thought that the platform I was standing on was there, and I actually fell and I actually hurt my shoulder because I didn't get my footing right. Now, if I'd have got all this right, I wouldn't have had to get up and kneel on the layout in the first place. So again, don't make the same mistake that I did. If you want to have a lovely turntable area like this, you've really got to have it so that you've got access on all sides. And again, that's my final group of areas that I think that you should look at when you build a layout. So again, it's a fabulous layout. I love running it. We run fabulous trains on it. It works really well, but there are compromises in the layout that if I had my chance over again, that I wouldn't have in this layout. So until next time, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and yeah, if you're going to build a layout, try and avoid some of these basic errors. You know, I hadn't built a layout for 40 odd years, and the last one I built was a tabletop layout, and it was an N-gauge layout, to take to exhibitions. So this is my first big return to the hobby, in the last 8 or 9 years. So with that in mind, we'll see you next time, and happy modelling, but have a look at these mistakes and try and avoid them on your own layout.